So in today's video, I want to talk about the upcoming Samsung Galaxy S20 because rumors and speculations are floating high right now when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S20. And honestly, I didn't really talk too much about this phone on my YouTube channel, and I really want to talk about this phone because as we speak right now, most things that are being covered on the internet regarding the upcoming Samsung Galaxy phone, the flagship for 2020, are already going to be most likely true, and most of this stuff is going to be right. Some of this may be a little bit off, but most likely almost 99% of this stuff that you see on the internet for the Samsung Galaxy S20, of course, are actually going to be real, and I actually want to talk about this. So let's actually talk about the smartphone. Now, when it comes to the design of the smartphone, it looks like Samsung is going to be sticking practically with the design that they had last year with the Note 10. Is pretty much going to look exactly like the Note 10. And sorry for all you fans that wanted a full screen on the front, because it appears that the Samsung Galaxy S20 is not going to have a full screen on the front of the device. Unfortunately, it does look like they are going to be going with the hole punch out again this year, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's really not intrusive like Apple's. You know, Apple's cutout notch is a little bit bigger, and then on top of that, I guess the technology where there was a technology in China where they actually had the camera under the display, but apparently I guess that's not ready to go. And then on top of that, if Samsung was to do something like OnePlus, you guys know OnePlus with the OnePlus 7 Pro, I do believe they actually have the camera inside the phone and it's like on an actual motor that pops out of the phone. I guess Samsung doesn't want to do that because a lot of people don't like that, and for the durability of the phone, I guess they just don't think it's practical and things like that. So it's not really a bad move that there is not a full face on the front of the display. It's probably like 90-something%. If you still have that small cutout on the front for the camera, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And then of course, let's actually, now that I've been talking about it, let's actually talk about the name of this smartphone, because rumors had it, of course, most people were just going to think that it was the Samsung Galaxy S11, of course, and that does make sense. Just call the smartphone the Samsung Galaxy S11, just go up by one number. But no, Samsung had other ideas. They decided to finally name it the Samsung Galaxy S20. Of course, that's not really confirmed yet until the actual event that's coming up later next month, but most likely that is going to be the name, and I don't see why they would change the name at this point. So it is most likely going to be called the Samsung Galaxy S20. That honestly did actually kind of confuse me at first, because I was like, why would they go with the Samsung Galaxy S20 instead of something like the Samsung Galaxy S11? But it looks like the reason they could have went with the S20 is because, of course, this is the year 2020, so they wanted to start off with a clean slate, and it does make sense. It's a new decade, it's a new smartphone, it's a new flagship for 2020, so just go ahead and go with the Samsung Galaxy S20. But honestly, I would have been okay with either name, whether they called it the S11 or whether they called it the Samsung Galaxy S20. I definitely would have been okay with both of those names, honestly. So I guess S20 it is. It might confuse a couple of people, but I think most people will be okay with the name S20. And then alongside that, when it actually comes to the performance of this thing, it looks like this thing is going to be a beast when it comes to the performance. Of course, we're going to be seeing a brand new chipset from like the different manufacturers like Snapdragon and things like that. So it is going to be very beastly. The one thing that's actually pretty interesting and pretty surprising, apparently this is going to be this is going to have as much RAM as something as like a laptop or a desktop, and that's absolutely crazy. I'm not 100% sure about how much RAM this smartphone is actually going to have, but I think it's somewhere around, let's say, 16 or 12 or something gig, and that's absolutely nutty for a flagship smartphone. And you do have to realize smartphones aren't as powerful as something like a desktop computer or even a laptop, and also the software is not the same as well. So why would you put that much RAM into a smartphone? But I guess there is no downside to putting a lot of RAM into a smartphone, because it does make the experience better. And I don't think anybody out there is going to go, oh, I wish the Samsung Galaxy S20 had 1 gig of RAM. No, the more RAM the better, obviously. And obviously I do think this is overkill, especially since we're talking about a mobile OS, and on top of it running Android, which is a mobile OS. You do have to realize this as well. There's not really too much you can actually do when it comes to Android. It's not like you're going to be doing high intensive crazy ass things you would be doing on like a desktop computer or a laptop with a regular dedicated OS instead of a mobile OS. So it really does boil my mind. And honestly, even though you always hear these rumors, and even though it's confirmed that a lot of these companies like using a lot of RAM in their Android smartphones, a lot of the time these companies, whether it's their own